We're live.
Oh, are we live? Welcome to the Graphter's podcast. Good heavens, there was me thinking I was dead in the water.
Let's get this started. So,
Okay,
hi,
right.
hi, I'm John.
And I'm Gary. And we're here.
We're here.
Yeah. This is the first time we've done this, obviously, as you can probably tell, because we haven't got a bloody clue what we're talking about. But that's okay. Actually, no, that's not true, is it?
No, I think we do have a clue what we're talking about.
I think
Unfortunately, we don't have a clue what to call it.
No. That's something that we are still trying to formulate, but we have to do that pretty sharpish. Hopefully, by the end of the time that we've actually gone and done all of this, we'll actually have some idea by the end of this. I think more about the fact is, how can we? What do you reckon? Do you think we're best explaining who we are and what we do?
We can have a go. That's for certain.
Right. After you, sir.
So, my name is John. I'm a Libran, and
Really? Really?
maybe we'll start again.
Oh my lord! Right, carry on.
3 swigs of a Heineken and we're away.
I don't know. Listen, I'm high on Fanta. It's all the zero sugar. It's all.
Let's start again. Do we do second names? That's for sure. Yeah.
If you want to, I don't know. I mean, I'm happy with first names for now.
Yeah. So I'm John, and I'm currently a director of education at an FE college in the north of England.
And my name is Gary, and I am currently a senior creative at a visual effects and motion graphics studio based in the northwest of England.
Fantastic. And we've known each other for too long.
Yes, we have known each other quite some time, haven't we?
We have.
It's ironic, actually, when you go right the way back. I think the first time we actually met, I was working at a company in London. And I'm sure you came into the office with your company and talked to us about stuff. And I probably thought, who the bloody hell does this guy think he is? And I'm sure you probably did exactly the same.
I wish I could say that I remember all of the companies that I actually went into, but I've actually recently reminisced about that sort of side of my life, I should say. I mean, I've said so many iterations of what I've been doing.
Yeah.
I mean, on a personal level, I do feel quite jealous sometimes that I didn't get into the industry as full on. I was talking to some wonderful people at Escape Technology, talking over a project that we've just finished and canned, which was absolutely phenomenal. More to follow on that. And
should we explain exactly what we both do? Because we've just said I've said I've worked for I don't know. I mean, I work for a visual effects company, and you work in education. But
what did we do?
Yeah, what do we do? What did we do? I'm going to tell you what I think you do. You tell teenagers how to get a job in the industry that I currently work in by teaching them the right way to do things and how to succeed at university. Hopefully.
Yes.
Is that
if my
about
employers
right?
if my employers listening to this, yes, that is exactly what we do.
Yes. And go on.
I would say that you create phenomenal phenomenal animation and visual effects for a variety of outputs and outsources.
Well,
some of which we can't talk about.
No. But some of which we can always
infer.
We may not be able to dip into the bag, but occasionally we may be able to fondle the seam. That sounds awful, but I'm going to keep that in.
So to clarify, yes, you're absolutely right. I work in creative digital technologies. I'm now director of curriculum, so the book falls with me on the design and implementation of working with industry partners, of working with potential employers. We cover everything from further education through to apprenticeships and higher apprenticeships, and we also cover the higher national diplomas and certificates.
But isn't there something else that you've been doing recently as well? Isn't there something which is like this external thing around Doncaster?
Yes. We've just recently installed a £1.5 million render farm and VFX suite that's funded by the Sheffield City region and co-funded as well by private partners.
And the biggest rendering software that you use on that is what? So just to remind myself, what is that piece of software that you actually use?
We've switched Autodesk out for Blender.
Ooh. And I think that's probably one of the main reasons why we've ended up doing this, isn't it? Really,
it is. Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
I mean, it's been 20 or 30 conversations over the last 5 years, I would say.
Yeah, pretty much.
Of which I thought, you fool! No one will use Blender.
Yes. It's interesting, that, isn't it?
It is. I think we've got to admit that. You must admit that since Epic Games started flashing the cash, and the Blender Foundation did become a recipient of that, there has been a massive movement and I would say a maturity in the coding that's gone on at Blender Foundation, and the team there are phenomenally responsive to suggestions and ideas. They are artists and artisans of software, which I think is something that gets overlooked quite a lot. And it was the thing that actually drew me to the software the most. I mean, when we were doing the installation, the only thing I could get working on the actual render farm, of which it's 2.5 terahertz of render power, was Blender. And we did it as a bit of a laugh, and our jaws hit the floor when we saw what Cycles could actually push out. It was phenomenal. Then this was version 2.83 alpha that we were running at the time, and then Eevee dropped, which was just, once again, I mean, the way that they work with NVIDIA and the RTX technology with NVIDIA is it's way out there. I would admit that from a logistical point of view, it's an unknown entity for the pipeline currently. Okay. I would admit that. But
I'm podcasting my head away in the opposite direction. I'm turning away from you, John. Turning away.
But this is the argument we've had, isn't it? Constantly.
Yeah. However, I think this is an argument that a lot of people actually have with this. I mean, fundamentally, this is basically like, this is probably going to end up being, a them and us podcast. I am one of them, but I'm also one of us, and John is exactly the same. We both work with Autodesk software, and we work with Adobe software, and then we also work with sort of like DaVinci Resolve and all the wonderful things that are around that architecture, like Fusion Studio and so on.
Well, but I have used Fusion since it was in Chaos Tools territory.
Well, I've been using Blender since 1995.
Yeah, I think it is well worth, if you get a chance to do a bit of YouTubing, to look up the interviews with Ton.
He's amazing
on what his mentality is and the way that his company evolved, and he doesn't really care about money, and he only cares about giving and having a tool that works in the here and now.
Yes,
which is fun.
Because if you look back to when it first started, people would open it up and go, "What the hell? What? Right button clicking." No. Just
to pull this back to the education route, I do remember that there was a game called Minecraft. That was it. That did exactly the same thing. So from these kind of seeds, great oaks can grow.
Absolutely. And even though everyone goes with this particular method of transformation, we're using transforms. So it's it's like Alt and then the 3 buttons. Is like the standard manipulations for using around these things. It's interesting because I remember going back. If I go back to the first time I worked in the industry, and I was using TDI Explore, which is, if anyone looks it up, is it had the first Dynamics package out in the market called Dynamation, It had a system where you did all your rigging and animation called Kinimation, which you then had brought into your main animation. You had to do all your character animation outside of the animation package. It was bonkers. But the interesting thing is, it used 3 buttons on the keyboard, and because it was on Silicon Graphics machines, those great big fridges
that I used to sell,
and that I used to work on. Hence why we're talking. So you'd have one left-hand click of the mouse button and Shift, Control, and Alt were the buttons that you pressed for using rotation, translation, and scale with one button click. Of course, now we're back to Blender. It's left-hand mouse click, and then it's left-hand mouse click with Shift and left-hand mouse click with Control. And with that, you're able to do everything: rotate, move, scale. The whole manipulation around the window is all there. It's fab.
I started in 1992 as a reseller for Silicon Graphics, working in Sheffield. And I'm sure anybody that's got any history will know who that company was. And at that time, there was Alias, the architectural package, and there was Wavefront, the renderer. Yeah. And even to this day, I still know of people that wish we had the Wavefront renderer because of the way that it worked.
IPR, the original IPR, was bloody amazing.
It was absolutely phenomenal.
Absolutely fantastic.
So I was right in at the very beginning when Silicon Graphics bought Alias and Wavefront, merged them together, created Alias Wavefront Technologies, and we were using Power Animator at the time, which was they introduced which effectively is Studio now. I mean, it is still the same thing. If you ever open up Autodesk Studio, it's the same.
It's still Power Animator.
It's not. It is. I mean, old people like us would look at it and go, "It's Power Animator. It's great." It really does look very similar, and we did. And I remember, I remember being on the beta team for Maya. And this package had 4 parts to it, and you had to import and export and import and export, and it was so frustrating. And obviously, I wasn't really in the know at that time, and I do remember sending a faux pas email, which should have gone to the support guys, my local support person in the UK, and it went to the reseller database because at that time email wasn't. It wasn't really a tried and tested thing, and you could get mixed up quite quickly in your Netscape browser. That was what we were using, the Netscape browser. Yeah, it was good, and I nearly lost my job. It would have all been over, and we wouldn't have been having this podcast.
Who said that?
Exactly. But luckily, I sweet talked my way through it, and the rest was, as they say, history. And I very quickly became what was commonly referred to as a demo jockey.
A demo jockey.
Yeah, we would go out. We would show our wares. I used to carry an Indigo Extreme. Yeah, £68,000 worth of hardware. We had a 22-inch monitor that weighed as much as a car. You used to have to lug up all those stairs, and it was pretty good. And I think we may have just missed each other when you were at Bournemouth University, because I think Bournemouth dropped into a direct SGI.
Yeah, I mean, they were still using SGs when I was there, but I mean, I graduated in 92,
just as I started working.
Yeah, and that was 1,000 years ago.
It's a long time ago, actually.
It is. I turned 50 this year. I've been doing this. Not this, obviously. I've been doing this for like 14 and a half minutes. But I've been working in this industry for 26 years. Is that right?
26 years. And I've been in the industry since 92, so I'm at 28 years.
God blimey.
Yeah. Although,
it is insane.
I suppose being in education for the last 15 kind of doesn't... It kind of wears off on you, but I think the beauty of it is, as you know, I've kept my hand well and truly in the the creative.
Sorry. my hand's been well and truly deep down in the creative pants of this industry.
It tries. It tries. But I mean, this is why we're having this podcast, because I mean, why I got involved with education. I mean, I kind of left It wasn't long after working with you at, I don't know if we're not allowed to say it, but in Manchester.
Yeah. The Northwest.
The Northwest, yeah. I was brought in as a creative hotshot, I think they called it. And as you said, you'll burn yourself out if you keep working like that, son. I think I left that job not long after that. I did a couple of stints down in London. We did I did some render wrangling, as it was called back then, mending people's render farms. And the long and short of it was, I think, a drunken night somewhere in a bar with certain people from said technology centre studios. We were talking about the lack of talent coming out of the education sector.
Oh yes.
And it was a common theme around the bars in Soho. That was.
It was very prevalent at the time. I mean, this is
2005, 2006. I think we were.
Yeah, I think I look back, and this is gospel truth. I swear to God, if I look back at what I did in like 16, 17 weeks for my final thing at university, it was awful. I could do the whole thing now, today, everything in one day. Without a shadow of without any problem at all. And if I wanted to be honest with you, I could render it at a slightly better quality. If I was trying to render it at the quality of that, I could render it probably pretty much in real time using Eevee and have it all done in one day. It wouldn't be hard.
I was just thinking of that meme that's out there at the moment with Studio Max opening, and the guy makes a Blender boat all animated before Max has finished opening up.
Yes,
it's quite a funny one, that one.
It's not to mention it's quite accurate. But yes, I was working, and the company I was working at was called 422 in Manchester, which is where you came and did some work. Someone sent in reels all the time, and they would be passed over from the people who basically got them at the desk in the morning, and they would be handed over to me or to Darren if I wasn't there for someone to look at these reels. And I would normally watch it, and I'd say, Darren, come here, and we'd sit there and watch them again, and we'd both just moan and bemoan about the quality, or the lack of quality, more to the point, that was coming out of the college system.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, there was at the time I was also writing tutorials for 3D World magazine.
You were,
and it was, you know, I got very frustrated. I was keeping getting these reels of people who didn't know what they were doing, and it wasn't their fault. It was the fault of the other colleges out there who were marketing this. I've got this wonderful animation course, and I can teach how to do X, Y, and Z, and without putting too fine a point on it, I do wonder potentially if during that time any of the lecturers who were teaching had ever actually been working actually in the system.
Yes, it's an interesting thought. I mean,
yeah,
is it because I am now in the system.
You are the person I'm talking about.
Yeah, I am the person. Well,
not you directly, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I remember at one of Aardvark's roundtable events.
This would be Aardvark Swift.
Aardvark Swift, a phenomenal asset to, not just because of the people that work there, but they actually do care about getting people into jobs, and they also give very robust feedback, and they've got a phenomenal platform. Anybody that is wanting to get into any of the industries from an education facility should always compete in one of their Rising Star or Search for a Star competitions, of which current closing date, I think, is 18th of December. But I mean, it is interesting when they would often refer to me as a man with a foot in both camps.
Yeah,
which I thought was a fair and accurate description, albeit one where I am now probably more tainted towards the education sector. So we would often have this to and fro with education partners and industry partners from games companies, and there was a common theme that came through all these conversations, which was kind of along the lines of, we can't produce people ready for industry because industry doesn't tell us what we should be doing. And I think that's a fair and open comment. You know, it's something that I think genuinely education facilities have always felt that the creative sector has been a closed shop, and it's very difficult to get in because of non-disclosure agreements and all the secrecy that goes on about the projects that you work in, which is fair. You know, that is a fair comment. And I think right now the industry itself has probably taken stock of that and realises that they have to do something to work with education partners, and they are. I think we've said, you know, in previous conversations, that the industry is now reaching back out, and it has its favourites, and there are companies that are out there that are working very, I think, very well with education partners, and not just single partners, actually facilitating a much more open discussion and forum. And there's lots of stuff going on, and Aardvark is one of those that certainly has been a bridging company. Yeah,
I mean, for me, Aardvark Swift have always been, first and foremost, they're about getting people into games. So, I mean, that's how it was originally, wasn't it? It was mostly but that has definitely spread around a lot more.
Yeah, they placed me at Revolution Software with Charles Cecil.
Oh yeah,
yeah, and that was back in, I think, 2002-3, the year of.
What were you doing there? Was it the wrangling?
No, I was brought in. I was brought in as a background artist. I think there was a bit of a bottleneck in the art pipeline, and they needed somebody that knew Maya and was able to work with Lightwave, because they were actually sending all the data into Lightwave to create light and occlusion maps, and then the engine brought them back together. It was quite clever the way it did it. And just to use 2 bits of software, I think for some people at the time was sort of like, what? You got 2 pieces of software to use?
You know 2 pieces of software?
That was it. And it was great.
Take 2 pieces of software to the shower? No. I want to wash my hair and go.
Yeah, it was a great little team up there. To say that they have such a cult following for Broken Sword series and things, but when you work with people like Charles, and there's been others as well, these real visionaries, they know what they want and they're going to get it, and it was great to work with somebody like that. And I learned, I've always stuck at places where I learn something. That's been, and I think that's why I was drawn to education, because if you're not going to learn in education, then you're not going to do anything really, are you?
No, but however, do not underestimate the power of learning whilst you're on the job.
Well, I think this is the soft skill that we're told we must have, Gary. We must have this soft skill, and we must teach students this soft skill. And unfortunately, it's not something we can teach. It's something that is, I think, inside every student. And I think, and this is going back to where I am now.
Yeah.
We take students at 16 years old coming out of Key Stage 4, which is your 16-year-olds coming out of secondary school, and they've had the creative bejesus kicked out of them, literally. They daren't be creative, and they daren't fail. It's a very surreal sort of. It's a very surreal situation, because you've got to spend the first sort of 3 or 4 weeks just building them up a little bit and giving them a bit of self-confidence and letting them find out that it's okay to be a bit different and to have wild and wacky ideas. I mean, I can remember someone once said to me, "There's no stupid questions, just stupid answers."
It's a very true thing. That there is no such thing as a stupid question at all.
Yeah. So
just being able to question. That's the most important thing, just being able to question. And it doesn't matter, at no point should you stop. I mean, we will get round to talking about some
open source
pipeline stuff at some point. Yeah, I mean, we will, because, I mean, this is the point of this, really. But, yes, I've been using Blender for a long time, but I've been a champion of this piece of software for so long, because for me, I was always like wondering, I want something. I want to be able to do this certain thing, and I can't do it in the software that the company I'm working for is paying for. I need to find it, so I will ask them, and I'll search as much as I can to find a solution. If I found a solution, then I will use that if it's available to me, and that is how I ended up basically using more and more Blender. Is because I'll be saying, well, how do I do this? I need this. I need to get it. I need to be able to use it. And, you reach a point now where everything streams or everything is downloadable. It's not a matter of waiting for a disk to appear. So, I can, the fact that I can literally, I mean, I tend to now to do most of my modelling in Blender, and then export out the OBJs, and then drop them into Maya.
But what's the difference? There isn't a difference.
No,
it's a bunch of vertices and a bunch of edges and a bunch of faces.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, though, that I have to animate most of my stuff in Maya purely because it's got to be accessible to somebody else.
I mean, I'm still
just talking about industry now.
Yeah, I'm still a fan of Maya from an animation point of view. There are things that Maya does that just just work. And
yes,
Blender is something that I'm still learning. I mean, you talk about you being the advocate for Blender, but I mean, when I gave you that call, I think in March or April, as we were in lockdown 1, and said, "Guess what I'm learning? I'm learning Blender."
Yes,
and
I
could hear you fall off the chair.
No. If anything, I was jumping up and punching the air with joy. I mean, it is. As I say, we've both got a long history with software. We've both come from back in the day when everybody who did this was fat, male, and bearded, and
Oh my God, you've just described me.
You're not fat.
But I am male and bearded.
You are male and bearded. Yes.
Let's go back. Let's go back to that sort of like you took the industry's perspective on the education.
I'm always going to take the industry perspective, I think.
So,
but only with the mind that I understand the direction that you will be coming from it as well, and appreciating it where we have that same.
Yeah. I think it's worth pointing out. I think that this may be the only podcast. Let's see how it goes, but hopefully it will be the first of many.
Well,
but I think
once it's been heavily edited,
I won't defend the indefensible. We're both coming from the same. I think from the same standpoint of it's about change. It's about evolution and revolution for sure. Which I really do. I mean, I've often been described at work as being a positive disruptor.
I like that,
and I'm gonna continue in that vein. Just to rewind and recount what we were talking about there.
Yep, you carry on. I'll shut up.
I came into the education sector not for want of job, but more for want of change, and it came with a financial price. It's fair to say the educational sector pays very poorly.
I was about to say something else then.
It pays very poorly in comparison with private sector points, which is part of the conundrum and the problem when you're trying to get industry veterans, industry people that are going to come in and enrich the education experience for the next generation of employees, and that's another thing. I will often refer to our learners as future employees because that is what they are. They're the next generation of workforce. But whilst I've been in this sector, I came in like a whirlwind. I thought I could change everything. I think that was par for the course for the type of people who we were, and we are creatives. We tend to feel that we have we're problem solvers, and here's a problem in front of me. I'm going to solve it in brute force. I'm going to tell everybody they're crap. Didn't go down well. Made a lot of enemies. Unfortunately, some of the upper staff, the upper senior teams, listened. They were very much open to some change. They told me to tone it down, take it back a bit. Gave me a part-time job. And said, go off to university and learn to be a teacher. Yeah. Which I did. I decided that committing to it was something I had to do. And we made those changes. Luckily, it was at a time in our lives where we got a newborn son, 2 or 3 years old. So it was a good time to be closer to home, not travelling around. Because, as you know, Gary, this is a ruthless industry that keeps you away from family. And here we are, spending some of our own time away from our families.
Yeah, but they're just over there. I mean, I can't hear them because they're the other side of 2 doors. Thankfully, the room behind me is like an airlock into this room. But still, I know they are there.
Yeah, and I know that my lovely wife is downstairs. So keeping quiet for
actually, your lovely wife is. Oh no, sorry.
She got there quick. So. Yeah, so looking at this from an educational point of view and learning about what the education sector was, and basing a lot of what I now consider to be, I think, the actual thing that happened to the industry. Bearing in mind that I started in '92 when we first started selling Silicon Graphics and Alias Wavefront and Autodesk products and all the other things. We started selling all of those things to the education sector, and I would go in with a bunch of Maya manuals that, if you remember, Gary, they came in volumes.
Yeah, there were like 8 or 9 of them, I think.
Yep. One for each tab.
Each area.
Literally, yeah.
Yeah, so like modelling, animation, lighting, shading, everything.
Still got some in the loft.
Have you still got some?
I have,
Oh my God, I would love to see those, mate. Honestly, I swear to God. But I remember because the software I learnt with was called Seagal, which is Computer Graphics Animation Language, and that was done at Bournemouth, and it's actually written by the Professor Peter Komninos, who I don't know if he's still there, but he was the guy who ran the course and wrote the software. So of course, when you come out and try and get a job in the industry, you haven't got any clue what you're doing, because the software that he used was basically you were writing lines of code to get it to do stuff.
Yeah.
So whereas this stuff, you suddenly open up something like Power Animator or 3ds Max or 3D Studio, if we're going back.
Yeah.
And
soft image.
Soft image.
Soft image.
Soft image, aye.
And we need a nod out there, I think, to Andy Jeffries, formerly of I think it was ITV, and he did all the commercial stuff for them in soft image. He did eventually join Alias Wavefront and become a Maya.
He didn't have a lot of choice, though, did he? Really?
Not really, no.
I mean, as you say, you were on the beta program. I was using an alpha version, which was on the computer next to me when I was working on Lost in Space, back in 1996 or 97. I think it was 96.
The very first digitally transferred files, I believe, Lost in Space had the very first digitally transferred files around Soho.
It was also the first film to be done in London, with about 11 different houses doing all of the effects. And it was...
You can tell.
An education in its own right. I did there's a shot where the Jupiter 1? The outer shell that comes off the ship in the film.
The big one.
That looks like the old spaceship it's the shape of the old spaceship from the TV show before it goes whoosh, and out comes this thing that's all lovely and curvy. And
by the way, this is not the Netflix version of Lost in Space.
No, which is superb.
Which is good.
I love that. There's going to be one more series of that. Anyway, so as this thing cracks open, and just a shot before it's coming up out into space, I'd done this series of tiles where 2 pixels along the top matched up with 2 pixels along the bottom, and 2 pixels along the left matched up with 2 pixels on the right. So all the stuff inside of those 2K squares was totally different, but all the edges were the same. So I had about 4 or 5 of those, so I could place them next to each other, bum 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 bum. So it looked like a much bigger thing than it was, and I'd hand painted all of the environment on the floor, and they needed it for another shot somewhere else, and they needed that software. Sorry, they needed the drawings that I'd done, the artwork that I'd done in Photoshop, and I think it was transferred over. It had to be burnt into a CD, and then taken over. And I think, where did it go?
I think these were laser discs.
No, not a laser disc. No, there were laser discs around, but it was burnt into. Was it burnt into something, or was it put on? Because they weren't portable hard drives, really.
I mean, there was the large format DAT tapes that were around at that time.
Oh, that was it. Yes, we put them on DAT.
Yeah, on DAT.
Oh my lord, I'd forgotten about DAT tapes. Oh, God, John, this is making me feel so old. I am so old.
Stop. Oh, it's not that bad. But I mean, the alternative, Gary, before that was they ran them around in cans, and it was on large beta format tapes. Which,
well, I remember one time
which would get demagnetized.
Yes, I remember taking. I actually took the drive out of my. My machine stopped working, and we had to get. This is I was working at a games firm in Croydon, and my machine, the Silicon Graphters machine, I had stopped working completely. Just went dead, and I was like, "What's going on? What's going on?" I had to borrow a pool car from the company, drive the computer to Hitchin in Hertfordshire. Went into a little company there on a side street, and these are the guys who basically performed all the IT for the company. And I took it in, and I sat down with this guy, and he goes, "Oh right, I think I know what the problem is." And he popped open the front, popped off the panel.
Wait a minute. Did he slam the drive on the desk?
Not as such.
Because that's what I used to do.
He described it. He said, "I think what you have there is a stiction problem."
Yeah, it's the stuck header.
Yes.
Yes,
So
that's
basically, he took it out and he held it in two hands
and swung it as hard as he could.
Shook the living daylights out of it, and then put it back in, and it worked.
I do remember once.
Probably charged us a fortune.
I remember once. I can't remember the university. It might have been Manchester Met, actually, we were at, and we were doing an install, and a guy said that their Silicon Graphics machine had frozen, and it wasn't. And one of the engineers that was with us went to go and have a look at it, came back with the drive, and asked them to leave so that they couldn't see what happened next. Which was literally it was a game of pretty much American football with the drive being thrown from one side of the room to the other.
Really?
And it worked.
Yeah.
Because it was
it's an arm going.
It was the arm just needed to be freed. Basically, I don't know. I think it was a heat thing. I think they actually buckled in the heat.
Yeah.
And what we did is we put it into a donor machine that we were actually installing, a fresh donor machine, and we just did a direct copy.
Yeah.
So we just copied. I mean, this is before Windows. This is when you had a proper grown-up operating system that was called Unix.
Yes, and you didn't have to build something off using a boot disk. You
just typed a long string of code in.
Oh yes,
and it did it.
Just. I remember typing things like PS-EF and
boot grep pipe minus.
Don't forget the pipe. Yes, boot grep pipe. Pipe.
The pipe. Yeah, and I still use the pipe every time I can when I'm writing things, because it does look very nice on a page. What? So we're back there. We're back in the early 90s, and I think this is where I actually met Daz Oakes.
Darren Oakes, like we will mention this man.
We will
on one occasion. He actually works for Sumo Digital, and he is. I can honestly tell you, one of the nicest people I've ever met.
And
he used to drive me bonkers, but I love implicitly.
And to be fair, he says it as it is. And
yeah.
If I could bottle up, just bottle up a little bit of his attitude to just sprinkle on students, they would all get jobs. They just so would. He's absolutely a true. He's a brilliant guy, and
he really is.
And it's great that he's so close to us, actually.
Of course.
So the split, we were going into places like Teesside, and that's where I met Daz, and he was a student then.
Yeah.
And he just used to hang around us, like asking. Well, you know what he's like.
Yes.
Just asking all those questions, and you didn't have the heart to tell him to do one. And
no, of course not.
He basically knew how to install Maya, uninstall Maya. We'd given him a bit of a crash course that we were supposed to give to the tutors, so he had that. And I mean, what he's done, what he doesn't know now about animation. It's not worth knowing.
Yeah, no, he's. I mean, for a person who is, fundamentally self-taught,
and this is it. And
he's
I
incredible.
And I think this is it, Gary. We are all three self-taught people.
Yes, but we are, and again, this is one of the important things about the pair of us, and Darren, and other people of our ilk, is that we've gotten to a stage now where the people who are teaching in industry and also teaching in universities and colleges actually are people who have done this for a living. So the standard of people who are coming out of education now is so much better than it was. So much better than it was. And also, we're reaching a stage now, again, a big deal of what we are kind of leading to constantly, is this point of you can teach people the standards, you can teach them the skills, you can explain everything that they need to know, and you don't have to actually use expensive software to do it anymore.
You don't. But I'm just going to finish this. So here we are, back in the 90s, and we're going to keep coming back.
I'm just going to be quiet so I don't.
Do you know what, Gary?
Anymore.
I thought it would be me doing what you're doing. I thought I'd be derailing you all the time.
Whether you're trying to get a point across and I keep on interrupting. Sorry, I'll shut up now. I'll just nod. Actually, that's no use. I'll just go,
Do you know what the podcast is? Pointless.
No. Actually, I think it's the Graphic Disruption podcast.
Brilliant. So this 1990 era was an era where you had people like Sanjay and Lee Danskin and myself and others going into educational facilities and installing these huge suites of software. And then I was going down to Rare and installing huge suites of software. And they both knew as much as each other. Now, I think this was the time when people coming out of education. So this was a time before they actually had a games development course, or an animation and VFX course, or stick whatever acronym you want on the course to make it sexy and sell to people so that you can put bums on seats.
Absolutely.
And this was a time when you had computing courses that suddenly had new super fantastic computers that did animation on them. You still had to code a fair bit of stuff in there, but it was getting easier. And you brought the graphics guys in and said, "Hey, look what you can do! You can, those fonts that it takes ages for you to render them in that 2D software. You can do them in there it is. It's in 3D. Look at that!" And oh yeah, brilliant! And people from that, it all started to be a big mixing pot. And I remember, this is a time when I remember before sort of the sort of Spielberg era, the SKG era, before, when Spielberg decided to go out and create DreamWorks. And I remember the conversation, because we had some of the guys come over from California who had sold the equipment into DreamWorks, and they bought Sun Microsystems, they bought Silicon Graphics Systems, they were buying there was even the VAX systems that were going in there, the big, there were the Cray machines, they were all in there. This is before Silicon Graphics bought the Crays out. Not the Crays, obviously. Honestly, Ron, we don't want any more.
No.
And from what I gather, and this I wasn't there, but this is sort of like, this has come from sort of like the conversations from these technicians that were putting this kit together. The dream that sort of Steven Spielberg had for DreamWorks was that all this, up until this point, Softimage didn't talk to Alias Wavefront. Nothing talked to each other. You had these really third-party clunky packages that did sort of like file transfer between one animation package to another animation package. And what he said is, look, just sit down, work it all out, and we'll bring in coders. Coders will write pipelines. We'll make software talk to each other. And by the way, we're going to buy a ton of it. So it kind of forced it forced the vendors then to start talking to each other. And I think it was at this point that the FBX language came out.
Filmbox.
Yeah, exactly. It was Filmbox, and and it sort of became this superconductor of transfer. And I think what I'm sort of saying, getting back to the education route, was this was a time when everybody was learning stuff, whether you were in industry or whether you were in education, you were learning stuff. So people that came out
and developing stuff,
they were truly at the leading edge of this technology.
Yep.
Now, unfortunately, as we know full well, education is not a well-funded industry, and you would make a purchase of £12 million for your computer systems, and you'd have to sit on that for maybe 8-10 years. In those 8 and 10 years, the industry evolved; it exploded. And in the last 5 years, we've seen consumption of media off the charts. It's bigger than. It's almost bigger than healthcare. It's getting that big. It's not, though, but truly it's not. But it feels like it.
For me, the fundamental change was before then. The moment that Maya was installable on a PC, that changed it.
It did, because that was the moment it was cracked.
Yeah. Oh, I suppose. Yeah.
It went out.
I'll talk about that.
Yeah. Up until that point, you could not crack a version of Alias Wavefront products. The FlexLM licensing that was on there, under a Unix system, you could get it. You could get the FlexLM system if you knew what you were doing, but you couldn't get the crack as it was.
No, I agree.
And as soon as it went on to Windows NT, I think within 3 months we saw the first cracks starting to literally appear.
Cracks started to appear.
Literally.
Yeah, but that is it, isn't it? So it became something which is fundamentally easier for people to get their hands onto. Interestingly, it could just be me, but I don't think of. I don't think I've ever had a piece of cracked software. At least I don't think so. I may have done, but I don't think I have. I've never used anything on production work that I haven't paid for. But that
I remember you grilling me when I came in with my laptop, making sure that I had all my licenses and serials. And ZBrush was the one that I bought that week, I think, and I was quite proud of that on a laptop.
Well, yeah. And that's the thing as well. The laptops are better as well. The fact that you can do what you do for a living on a laptop compared to, what essentially something that was the size of a fridge freezer I think because the moment it moved across and you could get it onto a PC, and then when it became possible to use on a Mac, and then it's kind of like let's not deny the fact that Maya is the industry number one pretty much.
Yeah,
because it's basically swooped in and destroyed a few pieces of software on the way.
I was talking about this the other day. I think I might have actually talked about it with Jason Jenner from Escape Technologies. We were having a bit of a conversation about this. We were literally just talking about the fact that I think that the biggest confusion that happens in education is education tries to do things that the industry is doing, and as by their own admission, our own admission in education, we can't compete, we can't catch up, we can't second guess what's happening in the industry because we're not innovating anymore. We're not breaking any new ground for industry. I would say probably that's maybe not the case in VR. There is certainly some really clever stuff happening in VR in education around the world, which is pretty cool. So we were talking about open source software and why can a package like Blender break into the education sector. And there's two things that I think really are in its favour. One, it is so easy to learn, and it's phenomenally easy to learn. Even an old dog like me transferred my skill set from Maya into Blender in the space of 3 months, and a lockdown breakdown.
A lockdown breakdown.
And I think the second thing is you're not going to be out of date. You have to come up with solutions to things, and that's what the industry is looking for in its employees. How do you solve a problem? And I think I've talked to several post-production houses, editing houses, and games companies. Mm-hmm. And Blender's a bit of a dirty secret. It gets used a lot in industry. Maybe not for finishing, but for starting.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that Blender, as an open source piece of 3D animation software, is ideal for starting our next generation of employees and creatives on that journey, because we're starting from that blank page, and it's almost the 90s
Actually,
again.
I think you find it's a cube, a camera, and a light. It's not entirely blank. It's not like Maya. They just give you a grid. This at least gives you something to look at it through, and something to light it.
I did a demonstration to the VFX year ones today on their first animation lesson. And
Bouncing ball.
No, bouncing cube. You've got to stay in Blender.
A bouncing cube, fantastic.
However, one of the things, and I found myself saying it to people an audience that had no clue, have never experienced Maya. I swung the perspective around a few times and then said, let's start with a new scene, and went Control N, and it didn't ask me to save because I hadn't done anything to the scene. You literally have to just open Maya up and, do you want to save this scene? No? Why would I want to save it?
Yeah. What I love it is, and this is one of my I've got a lot of bones to pick with Maya, I'll be perfectly frank. But one of the things that really bothers me is you save it, it's saved. I go to close Maya, and it asks me if I want to save my scene. No, I've just saved my goddamn scene!
Or any other
it's infuriating.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're saying with open source software. Open source software dares you to be creative again. It demands you to be creative again.
Yes. And the thing about it is there's so much of it out there now as well.
Yeah, and I think for any educators that are listening to this and are maybe taking the little toe into the water of open source, or thinking that if we go Blender, no industry will ever talk to us again. I think bet. Yeah, I think what you have to trust is that there is that much YouTube there are Gary is now one of them. There are that many YouTube champions. There are that many YouTube champions out there who are giving the knowledge away for free, who are solving problems. I mean, the fact that there is a thing called Nodevember, that it's a thing.
Excuse me, don't use my surname in vain.
That we have this amazing community, and I remember that community. I remember the Alias Wavefront days. That community did exist at one point, and then and then it closed. It closed shop very quickly, and you know, I think the way that Ton's put together Blender Foundation, it can never happen. And
fundamentally, it can't happen. I mean,
literally,
he won't let it happen.
It won't let it happen.
He's not about to be. As you say, he's not swayed by money. It's not of any interest to him.
It's not for sale.
No.
But I think the great thing that we've got going for Blender as it moves forward is this bunch of, like I say, this bunch of such creative coders that are out there that are just constantly cleaning the code so that every install is under 200 megabytes. Let me just reiterate that. 200 megabytes, not gigabytes, megabytes. And I think the last install I did of Maya asked for 6 gig of free space.
Yep, it's like After Effects. You know, it's like, what is it? It's currently running at 3.9 gig, I think it is. I was just doing some sort of cleaning up my machine today, and it is, you know, it's just bonkers.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't even really get talking on DaVinci, but wow, what a package! You know, I mean, yes, you do have to pay for it at the top end, but from a learning perspective, it does everything you want to edit any YouTube video ever.
Yes, indeed. I mean, you know, there's also, is it KDN Live?
Mm.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, the sort of effects compositors. Yeah,
it's an open source editor. Editor compositor.
And we're not forgetting that Blender also does that.
Yes, but let's not mention Natron. You know, they're still looking for people to actually look after the software, so we're not going to mention them. Blender is amazing. It's still got a long way to go. However, that long way has been getting shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter because of all the people who are doing development for it now. Yeah. And the thing that's going to really change it and make it everyone sit back and go, wow, this is amazing, is Blender 2.92, the next one, which is going to have everything nodes in it. And that is going to make people actually stand up and truly pay attention. Because what they're doing is they're turning Blender
into
Houdini. In one foul swoop for no money.
Yeah.
And I think there's some stuff out there at the minute, actually, which is, in fact, I'll be perfectly honest with you. I was just trying to get to it just then, and I'm looking at it right now. And what it is, essentially, it's a piece of disrupted land, which is basically which looks like it's been done with a displacement, but it's not. It's been done with a node, with the geometry nodes.
Yeah.
And basically, it's a scattering pebble thing on top of this surface.
I've seen it. Yeah, I saw
it. And it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And you can just open up the nodes and go, right, well, I want to change this with, I don't want that stone, I want this stone. Or I want this stone. So the base stone is one object, but then it goes into three nodes, which basically split it up and make it different sizes. So there's 3 different sizes. And then those are shifted and rotated independently and then dropped on the surface. And it's Houdini. It's Houdini.
Yeah. I mean... You know? I mean, the fact that people are writing add-ons, let's call them what they are. They're not plugins, they are add-ons.
Yeah.
And the add-on of the day for me this week has been snow. There is an add-on. There is an add-on for snow where you click a button and it's free, and you get snow. And I mean, I would say that, you know, if you compared it to Houdini's, you know, the way you would create a node graph for Houdini snow, but it's not going to be production ready for that. But for those shots that are slightly out of focus. Or not really needing that extra bit of, you know, if you're doing in-game geometry type things, boom, you've got it instant. Yeah, you've got look dev in a button.
It is a matter of basically taking the surface and dropping everything onto the top.
Yeah, which is snow.
Yes, I watched Ask NK using it.
Yeah, I did. That's where I got it from.
Yeah, and I just went, oh, come on.
And I think it's worth saying that, you know, you've got, if you ever want to see someone get super excited about something, just watch Ask NK, because he's lovely. He's brilliant.
You can tell he's genuinely either he's psyching it up for YouTube, which he might be.
You never know.
No, or he's just genuinely absolutely totally in love with it. I mean, I remember doing a snow shader that when I in Maya, and I cannot reiterate enough how I bemoan Maya's procedural texture system. Not because it's not usable; it's very usable. But the problem is that it just doesn't have a huge amount of 3D textures for you to use when you've got noise.
I think there's three textures that you can actually pull from.
Yeah, there's a stucco, and then there's I'm trying to think now. Then there's a volume noise, and then there's
3D cloud. I think I remember.
There's the cloud thing, which basically has things like billow and wave and wisp, and you can do a certain amount of stuff with it. Yes, of course you can. And I cannot underestimate how often I use this. You have a Voronoi texture, which essentially is a fractured. It's a fractured texture, and I use it all the time because if I want to get like cracks on a surface, I'll take two Voronois that are exactly the same, basically mix them together so I get the maximum or the minimum depending, and then I'll just kind of offset one of them ever so slightly, and you get leading crack edges. You can do so much with it, so much more with it than you ever could before. You can teach anybody you can teach people how to do 3D.
I think the other thing, and I think the other thing, Gary, is it goes back to math, pure math, in so many ways that a lot of software had taken away that I used to call it "Where's the button?" There's an attitude in so many I'm going to call them younger generations of us. Where's the button? You know, where's the button that does that? Where's the button that does this? There isn't a button. You have to make the button. In fact, you have to visualize the button before the button will exist.
Yes,
and I think that's what certainly Blender's got going for it, and that's why Houdini is so much of a powerhouse. I think in games and in animation at the moment because it's put power back into people that are very clever with numbers. And that was an important thing to happen. Yeah. Because yes, Maya was built for artists, but the problem with artists is they're artists at the end of the day, and we do end up, making things more complicated. Yeah, art that's brought these real rock stars for YouTube together, which are people, and if you look at them like Ducky 3D, for instance. Yeah. I tip his Patreon just because the guy is so cool. The stuff that comes out of his brain it is just insanely cool, and very much on my spectrum of influence for me. And he was a graphics major, I think, in university. Still, I think he's just finishing uni, to be fair. Yep. But obviously American university, which takes a little bit longer.
College.
What's the deal with that? But so he's got this, but he's been able to apply his principles and theories of colour and of understanding of shape and form, and he's been able to articulate it in 3 dimensions and time being that factor, Gary. And yes, I'm paying homage to your first tutorial.
Oh, please.
But yes, time being that factor, when you go into 4D.
Second tutorial.
Was it the second one?
Yes.
What happened to the first one?
First one's the first part of the planet shader. The next one that's coming out on Friday is the second part of the planet shader, where I put in the cities and the clouds and the atmosphere.
Whoa, can't wait.
That's tomorrow at 12 o'clock.
12 o'clock Central Time.
GMT,
GMT
thank you very
time.
much.
Yeah.
Central Time.
Western Pacific Time, I think you're fine, actually. I'm on Aliens Above Us, talking to John Stopworth, who claims to have seen a Blender-built alien.
There will certainly be a Blender-built snow creature before the end of this week.
Oh, really? I wonder what that's for.
Yes.
Is that for a certain challenge?
Well, I mean, why reinvent the wheel? The challenges are there. Give them to the students.
Oh, is that how you do it? Oh, now that. That's genius. That's brilliant, actually. But that's great as well because this is the thing. You're teaching the kids. YouTube is also teaching the kids.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. I mean, as you said, there's loads of. You're right. There's tutorials for everything out there, but the Blender community is colossal. But it's not just Blender. If I can just very quickly mention, honourable mentions. There are probably 4 pieces of software that come to my mind when I think about doing anything open source. The first one is always going to be Blender, because I think it's incredible. You can do anything in it apart from do a proper painting, I think is the worst way to put it. Grease pencil's great, but it's still not proper painting. And that leads into my second one, which is Critter, which is probably the best open source paint package that I've ever come across.
Yeah, GIMP is dead. Long live Critter.
Well, GIMP is rebuilding itself.
Yes, but as it currently stands,
is it known?
As it currently stands, it's. I think
they know it's not right.
Yes, it's not been right for a couple of years.
Yeah. But Critter is incredible, and I use Critter in my day job all the time. I mean, whenever I do a storyboard, I do all my drawing in Critter. I love the brushes, I love the pens. It's so quick and it's so fast.
I mean, I used to love Sketchbook Pro from Alias and then Autodesk. Yeah. And obviously, when it went onto the tablet, that was amazing. It was like, yeah, this is really cool. But Critter just tanks it. It's so much more intuitive.
Yes,
it's kind of solid. like my Paint and Studio Pro. It's the two packages put together. That's Critter.
Yes, I must admit, my Paint. I remember I used my Paint first and then found Critter.
I used to use my Paint.
I never went back.
Yeah,
I used my Paint, and then as you said,
that's two.
GIMP is and GIMP is always going to be an honourable mention for me, because even though it's going out, it's not completely gone. But the last one, and I'm still getting my head around this a little bit because I'm very heavily stuck in one Adobe product that I'm having difficulty getting out of because I can't find anything that actually does it as well, is Inkscape.
Yeah, I like Inkscape. Inkscape is pretty good. It's not as good as Illustrator.
That's the problem.
But
it's not as good. But
it could be.
It's not far off.
No,
I've on my trusty
Remarkable, not a sponsor.
I downloaded the PDF because I don't like printing out things if I can help it. So I downloaded the PDF manual for it, and it's like 130 pages manual that only starts talking about Inkscape at about 30 pages in.
What are they talking about it for?
It shows you a lot of artwork done by people using Inkscape, and then there's like little bits of text and stuff. But you can see how it works, and I suppose it's the same thing. The problem is, you see, that people are taught how to do something, but they're taught how to use a piece of software. So people don't learn how to do stuff; they learn how to use the software.
Yes, and that's what we need to get away from.
Absolutely, yes. You've heard me say this on more than one occasion. If you give a really good artist Critter and you give them Photoshop, they will produce a really good piece of work in both of them.
Yeah.
If you give someone who's talentless Photoshop,
where's the button? Where's the button? Yeah, I don't know where the button is. I want my Photoshop button.
So they use, this is terrible, I'm sorry, but they do something in Photoshop, and they do it. It's not very good, but they do it quickly, and then they go across to use Critter. It takes them longer to do it, but they still do exactly the same level of quality of work.
Yeah.
So it's never about the software. Any single person out there who says, "Oh, I can only do it in Maya," is talking out of their.
I mean, there's a long long held belief by me that 10,000 hours, and I'm gutted that somebody's got the Facebook group for that, but 10,000 hours is the minimum you should do to make yourself good at anything. I mean, that's my long held belief, that you need to put those hours in, and I'm not saying it's an actual figure, but I'm saying you should be doing as much home time work, if you're working at McDonald's, that's a great job to have while you're going through your educational phase, whatever age of life you are at. But you need to be then investing some time into actually your art, the art form that you're going into, whether that be coding or whether that be 3D software, animation, 2D concept art, visualization. Yep. You've got to put the time in, and if you don't put the time in, you're never going to get any good at it. and you will forget things, and you'll forget. It's memory muscle. I mean, you and I probably have the same memory muscle for hotkeys. It's just you just learn the way the gestures go.
Yeah, I mean, I think I use less hotkeys in Maya because what I tend to do is I don't whenever because when I was freelancing, I freelanced for 10 years, I think, and I intentionally would not. I would automatically reset the keyboard shortcuts that were on the computer back to the normal ones, because you go into a place and someone's got a setup and you just go, well, I'm just going to save your setup if that's okay, because I'm going to be using this machine and I want to know what I'm pressing. So you end up using just the set ones that come with the machine. But before I was freelance, the first thing I would do, because of constantly using Maya and After Effects one after the other, I remapped on the hotkeys page up and page down in Maya to 1 frame forwards and 1 frame backwards.
Because that was what you got in After Effects.
Because it's in After Effects. Page down, yeah.
Absolutely. And that's what this is all about.
This is all about this, yeah. Whether it's and also it's about the fact that this is happening in both. Right now, I think it's happening both in education and in industry.
Well, it's definitely happening in education because I'm forcing the issue.
You've championed it, and that's a very good thing. I mean, it's great. It's great for kids who want to go home and use this stuff at home, and they can just go home and they can email the Blender file to themselves.
Yeah.
And then they can open it because it's so tiny.
And it's not version dependent.
At home, and it's not version dependent. You can have from anything from 2.83 up to 2.91. And
2.92 alpha you can actually do.
I've been doing you know how I feel about alphas. They're wonderful, but they're not stable.
Yeah.
Strong and stable, John. Strong and stable.
Education is all about taking the risk.
Don't start pressing your pants, mate.
But I think we've rounded everything off on this now. I think that's brought us to quite a nice little end on that, really.
Yeah, I don't think it's. I mean, I don't think are we boring?
I've enjoyed it.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. So
we always do.
There's only 2 of us listening to it. Fine. What we'll have to do as well, I think, at some point, is maybe get some more perspectives from people and try and get people involved.
So we need some guests. We probably definitely need to try and bring in some of the names we've dropped today.
Well, I remember speaking to Lee years ago, so I don't know if Lee even remembers me. But no, I remember Lee Danskin. If you can get in contact with Lee, that'd be fun.
Yeah, I spoke to him last week, so we should be all right there.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, I've kept in touch with a lot of the old connections that I've got.
The old school.
You do sound like Spike Milligan when you do that one.
Blue bottle, you better be a dirty ratted swine.
Of course, we can't play most of his material now.
No. What I was saying to you earlier on about not Channel 4, BBC 4 Extra.
Yeah. But I think it would be good. It would be great to get some of these perspectives from other people, and I think in education as well. I mean, Adrian Smith's down at Falmouth now. He was working with me at Doncaster, and he's made made a great move down to Falmouth. It's they need a few more Adrians, and I think they're still limited in the way that they look at things. And I mean, even some of the other, let's face it, in the UK we're up against European institutions like Breda and Film Institute in Stuttgart they're just powerhouses because and the reason they're powerhouses is they let people be creative and they do not lock them down into have you met this outcome, have you met this thing. And I think there's a bit of change in the wind. Certainly I'm feeling a bit of change in the wind in this country from universities, and it's great, but
I've always got change in my wind.
And on that note,
I'm sorry.
We did so well.
I know, and there me, I blew it at the last minute.
But I thought that was quite good. I mean,
everything about you. Everything about you.
This work is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 4.0 International License. The theme music is My Everything by DJ Quads. If you like that, and I'm sure you probably did, there is a lot more of his great stuff, which you can find at soundcloud.com/DJQuads, or his music is also promoted by www.free-stock-music.com. But you're not fat. You are unbelievably strongly built, and you know that as well as I do.
Yes, I got the rhino gene.
No. Well, yeah, maybe. All you need is the helmet. I, on the other hand, I'm built for speed these days. Still not as fast as I would like to be, but I ran 6k this morning.
Phenomenal. I sweat just thinking about 6k.
Well, no, but 6k.
In fact, I'm
not a small lad, you know. I'm not a fatty, but I'm not a small lad.
The only K I get is the special K that comes out of the packet.
Oh well, I'll tell you what. That last half a K was very special this morning. It really was. Beep, cut this bit. But suffice it to say that one of the best things about going for a run in the morning
is the number 2 after.
Is the toilet after, yes.
It was it's the same on the bike. I must admit, when I was rattling the bike out.
It's like I remember. I used to go to a gym religiously back in the day when you could go to a gym, and this was when I was working at Cosgrove Hall when I was doing.
Are we beeping back in now?
We can beep back in if you want to. Yeah,
I think you keep that in.
Okay. Well, I might do. I might just cut out this bit. But when I was at Cosgrove Hall. I would go to a gym every about 3 times a week, which wasn't too far away in Cheadle-Hulme, and I had a training routine that was sorted out for me. It was great. It stopped me getting any fatter. It made me maybe a little bit svelter, and it was less about muscle. It was all about tone.
Yeah.
So it wasn't building; it was maintaining.
Mm.
And I always remember that, I could tell when I had a really, really good session because I'd go to the loo and my wee would be like steam. When it's just desperate to get out of your body because it's now boiling.
Yes.
Yeah. So
you've raised the internal clock temperature.
But I have lowered the bar in the podcast. Anyway.
Coming back to
yes.
I think what we were talking about.